Today we are going to be painting one of my very favorite flowers, and that is a peony. Now we are going to be painting this in a more realistic style, so it's going to take a while. I'm guessing this tutorial is going to take about an hour. So buckle up, grab your coffee or your wine or your tea because we're going to be here for a little bit. Because we are using layers, we're going to have to let each layer dry. And you might want to grab a blow dryer if you want to speed up that process. But yeah, we're just going to paint this beautiful coral colored peony today. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to sketch out our peony. This is the photo that I'm going to be using, and as you can see, all of the petals kind of curve in to this center part. There are a lot of petals. This is actually a photo where there's not as many petals. Some photos where you can't see the center are really just full of petals. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw a circle to kind of give me a general guideline. And I'm just going to start drawing in those petals. So the one on the left-hand side is kind of like an easy one to draw at first. I'm gonna make just like a cup shape, shallow cup. And then making that jagged edge. And I am drawing a little darker so that you guys can see it, but you wanna try to keep your lines light. We are going to be doing a coralish color, so you know it's not a light pink, so you're not going to be able to see the lines as easily, but always try to keep them pretty light. And then I'm just drawing in all these petals. Sorry, I'm not the best teacher for drawing. It's just like I'm just looking at it and drawing as I go, because all of these petals are a different shape. And there's a lot of them. But overall, what we want is all these petals to go around this center area. And they're just like this little cup shape. And then this one's kind of open. If you guys don't have Skillshare, there's some great drawing classes on there if you struggle with drawing. Drawing is one of the very first things that I did as a child. So it's kind of my first love. And then the petals are just one stacked on top of another. I hope I don't get any angry comments about this part. You know, a good hack, if you guys are struggling with drawing this, print it out and just trace it. Don't feel bad about tracing something. If, you know, drawing's a big struggle for you, just trace it so you can get the general shape of it, and then you can paint it, and over time, just practice your drawing and you'll get better at it. I guess you could technically, if you have an iPad or something, you could trace it directly on paper from your iPad. Just don't press too hard. So we got lots of petals here. Like I said, you're in this for the long haul. This is gonna be a nice full tutorial. Don't worry, some of my other flower ones are a lot shorter because we do more of a loose style, or like the California poppy was a lot simpler. Right, and also if you want to, throw in whatever kind of petal you want. Like if you want to make another petal right here, just go right ahead. That's what I'm gonna do. Okay, so we're coming around, we got this guy. You guys can also feel free to play music if you want. You can't put music on here unless it's royalty-free music. And all the music that is free is it's just really repetitive. So that's why I don't play music on these things. I haven't quite figured out how to get music that's soothing to listen to the entire time. And in this center area, there's a lot of yellow. And I'm just gonna make the outline so we know what to protect when we start painting the petals. But we don't have to get too crazy here. It's all these little, are those called stamens? I think they are. Can't remember from biology or whenever I learned that. Okay, got this guy coming in. All those leaves. Make sure you're getting that little edge where the petal pulls over, because that is going to add a lot of really cool depth when we start painting. It's essentially just a bunch of C curves in different capacities. This is probably one of our more complicated flowers to paint, just because there are so many petals. Okay, I think that I'm pretty happy with this. Just put in a couple. Pretty happy with the layout of this. We got some good little petals coming in here. And maybe just make the little stem. I'm gonna make just a little petal coming out to the side like that. And maybe just one more over here with a jagged edge like it's curled in. Okay, now your lines should be a little lighter than mine. I wanted you to be able to see what I was drawing. You don't have to take them up entirely, but we want to be able to still see this through our base layer, but since we're doing coral, it is going to be a little darker, so I think that's pretty good. Okay, now we're going to mix up a coral color similar to our picture, and what we want is that very lightest. So if you squint your eyes and you look at the picture, you can see that really light tone. That's what we want to put all over the peony, because that is going to be our lightest tone. We don't want to go darker than that for our base layer, because we want to still be able to keep the really light tones that we see in our photo. So I have opera pink or opera rose right here. I have a little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow. This is yellow lemon deep, because there's a little tint of orange. And now I'm just, come in here and I'm putting a wash over this entire thing. I'm sorry, not the middle. So just keep away from the middle with this color. But I'm just coming in, painting. I finally got a watercolor block again. So I am working on a watercolor block right now. If you are not working on a watercolor block, you need to tape down your paper, because if you don't tape it down, it's gonna buckle super bad, because we're using so much water and so many layers here. Just paint around these little stamens in here. Just use the tip of your brush. I have a size 6 brush, but if you want something more detailed, a 2, a 1, or a 0 would be great for that. And just doing that. And this is, again, just a really light wash. We're making sure we're keeping our paper wet as we paint. We don't want it to dry with like a harsh line. So just make sure it's nice and wet. And my lines are a little darker because I wanted you to be able to see them. it is kind of relaxing working on a painting for this long because it really forces you to just relax and be okay with the process. It's kind of meditative. Or you might be cursing my name. I don't know. Okay, we want to add just some little pops of color while this is still wet. So we're using that wet on wet technique. And I'm going to mix up just a little darker coral and kind of pop it into some of these areas that I think maybe might have that when I'm looking at the photo. I don't know how to get you guys this photo because I can't keep it on the screen all the time. So maybe screenshot it if that's helpful for you, or you can search Coral Peony and maybe it'll pop up on Google. Just kind of popping in some colors here where I see them in the painting, but nothing super heavy because we're gonna add all those details later. But just having a light wash with some variation of color is going to make it more interesting. All right. Okay. Now we need to let this dry. So either let it dry just naturally or grab a blow dryer, or you could also put your painting in the sun if it's not taped down. If it is taped down, don't pull it up and then go take it in the sun and then put it back. It just will be a disaster on your paper. But so either use a blow dryer or wait for it to dry naturally. When it's dry, it won't be shiny anymore, and when you it should be dry to the touch. So I'm gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna start putting in some of those layers. All right, we're back to painting our peony. It's all nice and dry, and we're going to mix up some color. So somewhere that I always make a mistake is I don't mix up enough of the color that I'm using. So make sure you really mix up a good amount, because what happens is I'll mix some up, but it's not enough. And then I'll try to make that exact same color and it won't be close to it at all. So I'm really making a lot of this right now. Just adding lots of water. Okay, now I'm gonna add in some yellow because I wanna get more of that coral tone. So I'll help it be a little more orange. And of course, we're not gonna just use one color like this. We're going to be using a lot of varying shades of the same color because we want it to look interesting. So this is Opera Rose. You guys know I love Opera Rose. Oops. See, this is why you don't keep your water right there. I'm gonna keep it up here. And if you guys have not painted with me before, I always use 2 water cups, one for warm tones and one for cool tones, because it keeps the paint nice and vibrant. So I'm gonna add a little more Opera Rose. Feel free to mix up whatever color you want. I'm going to try to match it as close as possible to the image that I showed you in the beginning. But you can do whatever you'd like. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this color. And we're going to start painting. Now we want to start working on, like, from the left-hand side down. Oops. Because if we start working down here, then we're going to be putting our hand in our painting. Of course, I'm right-handed, so if you're left-handed, it might be different for you. But we are going to start up here. So I'm just going to, if you guys did the ranunculus tutorial, this is very similar. We're just outlining the petals, making sure we're just getting the bottom. Technically, this is, yeah, it is, okay, it is the bottom, looking at the picture. And then just coming in with straight up water and wetting it until it touches and kind of bleeds. And we're gonna do this over this whole painting. Feel free to grab a smaller brush if you're having problems with the details. I have a size 6 here. So we cannot touch anything that this is touching. Otherwise it's going to bleed into itself, and we do not want that. So going to work on this little petal right here. And from the paint or picture, it's a little darker. So I'm outlining that, grabbing water, just blending it in. And this is the point of the tutorial when you probably want to have some nice music playing and maybe a cup of coffee or tea, because we're just going around and doing the same thing to all the petals, but being really mindful of what we're painting. So for example, right here, this petal is folding over a little bit. So we want to make sure that we don't paint that folded part, because that would ruin it. So I'm just painting this petal behind it and making sure that I'm just grabbing some water and then blending. And kind of alternating between colors. So this one's a little more pink, this one's a little more reddish, this one's lighter, just all the way around. And we have a petal here. And this petal also has this little section that's pulled over, but that pulled over section is going to be lighter. So we might just leave it the color that it is right now. I like to determine that after the second layer that we're doing right now. Okay. And then the search is on for what else can we paint here that's not touching. So there's something right here. And remember, there's kind of a little jagged edge to these petals, and we want to make sure that we get that. So we get that detail. And there we go. I'm actually going to switch to a smaller brush because this one's I'm having a hard time getting the details. So now I'm working with a size 2 brush. And this has a petal curving. A lot of these have that curved petal coming over. So I could actually paint right underneath it because it's not going to touch that wet paint. And I'm just filling it in completely. And then I'm going to grab a slightly darker tone and just dab it right here so there's a little shadow. Do that over here too. Okay, now we can work over here because that's not touching. Grabbing just water, going up along that edge. Probably add a little more corally tone because it looks just a little too pink. Okay, do this one out here. Very repetitive, but sometimes those repetitive paintings can be really meditative. Poking in some color. Okay, so can't really touch anything over here because it will bleed into itself. We could do this cute little petal right here. So the darkest point is going to be here where it kind of overlaps. And the lightest point is going to be at the top. So I'm just grabbing plain water again, going along that edge, and then mixing the color a little bit. You can always pop in some more if we want. There's a little petal down here. All right, we could do this guy. I'm gonna say that this is a kind of a really dark shadow under here. So I'm just painting the whole thing dark. I might pull a highlight. If you rinse off your brush and you tap it dry on your paper towel and you come back, you can press down and pull up some of the paint. So if you thought you put a little too much there, you can do that. We can paint this leaf or this petal. The cool thing about painting when there's a lot of petals is you do get to like work on one layer for a while. You don't have to keep drying it, which is nice because these are drying as we paint down here. Rinse, grab just regular water. Okay. What else can we do? Those are all touching. We have this guy that we can paint. And this, when I'm looking at the picture, has a little more yellow. So I'm gonna pop in some yellow. And rinse my brush, grab straight water. Where are you guys watching from? I love to hear where everybody's watching from. It's very interesting to me. I love how you can just be across the world through the internet. Okay, we can't touch any of these guys. We could work on this petal. So really light. I have a lot of water on my brush right now. Because I want to keep this pretty light. Maybe add a little more pink. Go. All right, we could, some of these, oh, this one we can definitely do. And if you feel like you want to mute down your color at all, just mix in a little bit of blue or green, like just a tiny bit, and it'll help mute it down. I think I might do it right here because this would definitely be a pretty heavy shadow. So I just add a little bit of green and it makes it more of a kind of murky clay-like color. Give it some shadow. We'll do that over here. Oops, that's way too brown. All right. Okay. Now, oh, we could also do that guy. And you can see the petals kind of pop out, like this one, for example, looks really cool right now because almost all its sides are painted. It's definitely poking out a little bit more. All right, now we're going back up here to see what we could paint. When we come back down the second time, we are gonna paint the center area too, because this will be nice. We're gonna have to do a couple layers here. So we're just going right back up wherever we can paint. Whatever is dry. If it's not dry, don't touch it. Otherwise, you're gonna get some bleeding and you don't want that. Do you guys like peonies? I love them. They're like my favorite flower. I mean, I like a lot of flowers, but I really like the peonies. They're just so pretty. And in the US, we have Trader Joe's and they have peonies usually in May, and it's like the cheapest you can get them anywhere, which is so crazy, but they're so pretty. I'm just pulling a highlight here a little bit because it was a little too dark for me. And I might actually add in a little more yellow, so like tap it just like that. I guess that didn't come out yellow, but a little darker of a shadow. Then I'm gonna come over here. I'm actually gonna switch to my size let's see, what is this? Size 0 brush, because it just has a little finer detail that I'm looking for right now. I keep getting afraid that my camera's not recording, but it is recording, so we are good. There we go. Coming in there with straight water. So if you guys are here, this is part of I'm doing a 31 days of flowers for the month of March. And this is one of the flowers that we're doing. So that's why I made this tutorial, but of course anybody can watch this tutorial. But if you are part of that challenge, I'm glad you're here and that you're still sticking with us. Just popping in a little more color. There we go. And this guy is pretty big, so I am gonna go back to a little bit of a bigger brush, maybe a little more pink. Make sure these are dry, they are. And I do want my color to be slightly different than this. Oop, that one is not all the way dry yet, but we're gonna go for it anyways. Like I said, I want it to be slightly different color, just so it sticks out a little bit. Just grabbing that water. I think we need some pink here. There we go. Okay. And I'm just leaving all of those areas where the petal flips over, and we can go and edit those later, but for now we're just gonna leave them as is. Adding in a little more orange here. This guy, pretty big petal. Just painting around the bottom. We don't want to paint over our little pollen center. And then grabbing just water up on that edge of the little curled over part of the leaf. Maybe just pop in a little more. This is my favorite thing, to just pop in paint like this. It's so cool to see it move. Since it is folded over, we will need to put some shadows under here. I usually wait until the third layer to do that. Okay, and we could paint this one over here because it's not touching. Right, these are all dry, so we could do this, the one behind it. Realistic paintings sure do take a while, don't they? Just paint, paint, paint. And that one's dry, so we could, oh, actually we can't do that because these two are gonna touch, so we have to wait there. We could paint this. There's like a teeny one in here. Gonna make it a little more pink, a little more bright. This guy. And remember, we have that little jagged top from the petal being folded over. There's too much water here, so I'm just grabbing a dry brush and tapping it, and it will soak up the water. Is there anything else that we can do over here? We can do, oh, not yet. because there's just a tiny bit attached right there. So we could do this petal over here. This one's just kind of coming up. Oop, I don't know what happened to that color, but it looks very different. Could do this petal, that one's dry. Will you guys let me know if you do this whole tutorial? I'm always so curious if people stick with me this long for these long tutorials. It's also helpful for me to know, so I know whether I should be posting these or if I should be keeping them more short. I mean, this is just reality, that this is how long it takes to do a painting like this, but I know sometimes people want them to be shorter. I have not found a shorter way to paint realistically like this. Sorry. Okay. We can paint this outside one. As you can see, it's coming together. Definitely have a lot of kind of different shades of coral and pink going on here. Just tap it in. This is dry down here, so we could work on this. Okay. This beauty right here. Just come in. What's going on here? Okay, so it does come all the way out. So just adding some paint down here. And I'm just taking that water and mixing it until it meets the paint at the bottom. And this looks really pretty because we have this really cool shadow here. And it looks really realistic to me because of all the other shadows and everything around it. I'm gonna tap in a little extra color because it is pretty light compared to the rest of the painting. Just letting that color come in. And oops, that's still wet. Okay, so can we do anything over here? Yes, we can paint this petal. Right, just going along that jagged edge of the petal behind it. And grabbing water. That's a lot of water. And I know I've said this before on some of my longer tutorials, but something like this could really take me like 5 hours. And I'm not gonna have you here for 5 hours. Don't you worry. But like I would continue to layer upon layer upon layer because that's when you're really gonna start to get it looking really realistic. But for this one, we're gonna do just the minimum amount that we can do to get it to look pretty realistic and interesting to look at. So this is my mistake. That's wet right there and it's starting to bleed, which is not what I want. But what we can do is come in with a dry brush and just press down and it'll kind of come up. It won't be perfect, but it will come up a little bit. And I think what we're going to have to do, yeah, I just ruined that one too. I am not allowed to touch this anymore. We're gonna have to let this dry, and then we'll come back and work on it more. We could put in the stem really quick. So for peonies, they have a really bright kind of lemon green, yellowy green color. And we're not going to worry too much about the stem. Just a little extra thing here. We can add like a shadow to it at the end. But let your painting dry so that we can get back in here and work on some other layers here. Okay, so we've got this dry, and I hope you guys don't mind, but the sun is starting to come in here. So you're gonna have a little bit of shadows. Hope that doesn't bother you. Now I am going to do this yellow part because I told you guys we were gonna do it and we haven't done it yet. So just grab like a pale yellow. We're not going to be overly detailed in this, but just paint a pale yellow so that we don't keep forgetting this, because we are gonna have to do a couple layers on here. Just grab that yellow. Okay. All right, so we have our yellow section. I'm gonna go back, and now we're just doing the same thing again. We're coming in and putting more layers. So next step, you want to kind of accentuate areas where, well, there are a couple of places that we have not painted at all a second layer. So first we need to attend to those. And let's see, this guy, wow, this is a really big, I think this is coming down like this. This is like a really big petal right here. And this is a secondary petal, but it's not showing up really well because we'll have to put a shadow here once it dries. And then there's this little teeny petal. It's just like hanging out in there. I'm gonna just separate them. There we go. And then this guy has not been painted yet. So just coming in around each one of the petals, making it darker. Just grabbing water and blend, blend, blend. And you can even kind of poke in a little extra if you think it needs it. I'm gonna add just a shadow right here, a little bit more. But I'm not going to extend my water so it touches here. So keep your water just close by. I just wanted to add a little slightly darker shadow there. This one has a little petal coming up. Get in there. Then we got this big petal here. And then we got this one, and we're gonna make it a little dark because technically it would be a little darker because this is the inside of the petal and it's also behind this other petal. Just think about those kind of things in your painting. And we're gonna push up against this little jagged curve. maybe just, oop, that was a lot of water. Adding a little darker. That's kind of too dark for me. So I'm gonna grab a little of the pigment up with my dry brush. Okay, I think this is the only one that we haven't painted, but we can't get in that right now. So now is our opportunity to come in and just darken areas that we want to darken. So this one looks kind of light to me up here. So I'm just doing that same exact method, but just adding more pigment. And anywhere that I feel like could use a shadow, like here, just adding in something that's darker than what's currently there. And like I said before, you can mix in different colors. Not like totally different colors, but different shades of what you're already working with. This is like an interesting one over here. Maybe go like this. There we go. Is that all dry around here? Yeah, this one hasn't been painted. I don't know how that one escaped me. It's coming up. Essentially, you don't want anything to be back to back in the exact same color, because you want there to be some variation so it looks like the petals are on top of each other. So if I'm going around here and looking, maybe this one could use a little more. And then there would also be a shadow at the top where it kind of folds over. And then I just take some water to blend that in. Just think, what I like to say is look at your image and kind of squint your eyes, and you'll be able to see easier where the shadows are. And if you are like me, then you'll bring this into your everyday life and find yourself doing it to everything. Definitely have a shadow here. And we still have to come back and paint this petal, which I should have done that, but. And then if you are looking at the white part where the flower goes over and it looks too white, just add a little color to it. But make sure you're still keeping that edge, that really light edge, which is our original base layer. You can either add a little black or a little of its opposing color, so green, to make it a little darker. Darker here. I'm gonna paint this one because that one is ready to be painted. Yeah, so just go around and make those areas where it would be more shaded Your shading is really what's going to make a painting look realistic. That's just the cold, hard facts. But make sure you're not touching something that's still wet because you don't want it to blend into your other dry or other wet artwork. And to add some stuff in here, there's some green in here. So I'm just lightly like making some green little circles. And then mixing up a more gold color. This is my Indian yellow. I love it. It's so pretty. I'm almost, this is all I have left of it. Might add a little brown to make it a little more golden. And then we're just going to make kind of little lines on here, similar to what's in the picture. Not perfect, but similar. You could spend all day or a couple days on a painting. Most of my paintings that are in my Etsy shop, they took me several days to complete because of all of the layering. And there is actually some pink in here too. Just do a little pink. Paint this guy finally. Oh, the sun just went behind a cloud. We lost our natural light. Okay. Some things around here. So there would be a little bit more dark, and we can grab that Indian yellow or whatever kind of yellow you have and maybe add just a little tiny bit of blue so it gets a little darker. Sorry, purple is its opposing color. So a little purple. Make it a little more golden. And then just paint along the edge of these petals that are pushing into it. Mix it with a little water because there would be some shadowing here. But make sure all your petals are dry around it. Poke in that deeper color. Okay. For the stem, grab a little darker green. We're just going to do something really simple. Just paint a line down the edge. And then just add water so it blends a little bit. We're not going to do anything too fancy with the stem today. And I'm just gonna keep playing with this until I like my shadows. So adding a little more shadow here and there where you think it needs it. Making sure that there's a delineation between each petal. You don't want them to look like they're just blending into the other petal. That's not the style we're going for. We're going for a realistic style. But you probably have other things you need to do today, so we can't be here all day. But it's also really nice to explore this style of painting and to just relax. How many times a week do we just let ourselves be in something and just doing something and not be thinking about the next thing and the next thing, or I can't, give an hour of time for myself so that I can, do something for me. I hope that it feels like that for you guys, that you're doing something for you when you paint. I love painting. It's really relaxing to me. It is my job, but I do still paint even when it's not my job. It's like one of my favorite things to do on the weekend, to just get some coffee. And I like to follow other artists and look at their tutorials. If I don't have like a personal project that I want to paint for myself, I do like seeing what other watercolor artists are doing, and a lot of them have tutorials, and I enjoy it. It's really fun. Or Procreate. I also like doing Procreate tutorials. Doing more of those recently. Okay, I'm gonna leave this as is. You know what? Let's put just a couple of things on the inside. So grab a brown, kind of a golden brown, and let's put little lines next to these, what I think are called stamens. I don't know. I hope that's not the wrong word. I hope I'm not using like a really embarrassing word. Oh my gosh. I'll save that story for another time. But just poking in a little bit of this color because it just makes it look a little more interesting, and like there's some shadows. And I keep thinking that I want to stop, but then I see something else that I want to add a shadow to. But I think this is good enough for today, and just as a nice tutorial for the peonies. But this is a peony. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please let me know. I always answer the comments, and thanks for watching this with me.